Welcome back, and so glad you're taking time to be in the Word every day. These next few days, we're going through some very short books. Yesterday, we looked at 2 John, which is only 13 chapters. Today, we'll be looking at 3 John. Tomorrow, Jude. I said 13 chapters, I meant 13 verses. We'll be looking at Jude, another very short book, as we move toward Revelation. We'll be finishing this series, Romans through Revelation, by October, middle October, I believe. 3 John is a book it's really about God's people and being discerning about God's people. We could say being welcoming and discerning concerning God's people. In the first few verses there, we see John really joyful to find that this church that he's addressing here is walking in the truth, and they're demonstrating that truth by the welcome of some traveling evangelists or apostolic representatives that have come to that church. John is, beginning in verse 5, commending this church, a faithful thing that they are doing because of the testimony of receiving the brothers that had been sent to them. And John makes a point to identify them as very worthy brothers. He says they have gone out for the sake of the name. So this is John's Hebrew way of referring to God for the sake of the name, Jesus here, accepting nothing from the Gentiles. So they went out completely supported by the Jewish members of the church. Perhaps this was a mission to Jewish synagogues that they were participating in. We don't know for sure, but John was commending them for having received these worthy brothers, and how often we should do that as well. We should be receiving men and women who are offering to come to our church and to support the ministry of the church, and perhaps even advance the ministry by the use of their gifts and talents and abilities. Then John moves in verse 9 to the discernment. So on the one hand, we need to be welcoming and ready to receive. On the other hand, we also need to be discerning, because he calls out a man by the name of Diotrephes, if I'm pronouncing that right, as really an unfaithful servant, an unfaithful man in the church. And why he's unfaithful, John describes in verses 9 down to about 12 or 11, let's say, and identified several things here. Number one, as you go through these verses, notice how self-focused this man is. He's narcissistic. He's focused on himself and his desires and his demands. He's not looking out for the good of the church, doesn't have humility, and instead he is trying to get his own way all the time. Notice also that he rejects authority. I think what John is talking about is his apostolic authority. What we might see in the church today is one elder who's always out of step with the others, perhaps on non-biblical grounds, so we have to be discerning about that. An elder who will not take correction, perhaps a man or a woman who is always contrarian in their views of things. But they will not take authority, they reject authority, they will not submit to it. They speak wicked lies is another sign here, that they are spreading gossip or rumors or innuendo, making up stories, but spreading these wicked lies. And they're not receiving, in this particular case, they're not receiving these faithful brothers. So I would take this to mean that they won't take any correction. They won't take input from anyone else. It's my way or the highway. And we've all run into leaders like that and kind of walk away scratching our head. Well, John gives us a category here that these are unfaithful men. These are all the signs of unfaithful men. Finally, you'll see in these verses that such men also cause division within the body. And, so there must be division. When there are faithful and unfaithful people in the church, there will ultimately be divisions among God's people. So division is not necessarily automatically a terrible thing or a bad thing or something to be avoided. But if the division is between those who are faithful and those who are unfaithful, then certainly receive that division. Then we see faithful men, starting in verse 12. Demetrius, and some characteristics of faithful men. First, they have a good reputation. I'm reminded from 1 Timothy how elders are to be above reproach, and they're to have a good reputation among unbelievers. And that's what Demetrius has here. He has a good reputation, and it's widely known and it's widely acknowledged that he is a good man. Also, that this reputation is reinforced. John says he adds his testimony to the testimony of others. So here you have an apostolic endorsement. What a wonderful thing to be endorsed by apostles. What would we look at for the equivalent of that? Well, this might step on some toes, but I think that one thing to look for is men that are well trained. Now, I have a bias toward looking to men who are trained in good evangelical conservative seminaries. I think that's a benefit. If they've graduated from that, then it shows that they have been exposed to the truth. They have been taught the truth. I'd also look to, if you're part of a affiliation or a denomination, whether that person has been ordained. Have they been ordained by an affiliate or a denomination or a reputable church that would testify to their soundness of doctrine and their pastoral ability. So that would be another test, I think, that would bring this into the 21st century. So, brothers and sisters, we're called to both welcome those who would teach us God's word and also be very discerning. We've seen that since 1 John in these final and short books of the New Testament. Of course, the book of Revelation will tell us what happens to the church at the end of the church age when apostasy sets in. So these are warning us about what's coming. So God bless you, brothers and sisters. Enjoy your reading in these short books. May God use these in your life to encourage you, to build you up, to edify you, and to equip you for the work that God has given you to do. God bless you.